This is the Ramana Maharshi satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke. I'm not a guru or a teacher. I just love this teaching, so want to share it. I'm reviewing and commenting on the book Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi, and today is talk number 177. This is a long one, so we have a bit to absorb. The questioner asks, what is mahat? Maharshi, the projected light from absolute consciousness. Just as a seed swells up before sprouting and then sprouts to grow, so also the absolute consciousness projects light, manifests as the ego, and grows up as the body and the universe. Chit is the absolute, and it leads to mahat, the projected consciousness, like the swollen seed. This leads to ahankara, the ego, which leads to manas, the mind. And manas is made out of aham, idam, I am and I do, the body and the world. Major Chadwick asks, is it the same as cosmic consciousness? Maharshi, yes, it is so before the birth of the ego and the universe. It comprises them all. Just as the pictures thrown on the screen are visible by the light projected from a spot, so also the body and the other objects are all visible in that reflected consciousness. It is therefore also cosmic consciousness. Again, in the microcosm, the body and all other objects are all contained in the brain. The light is projected on the brain. The impressions in the brain become manifest as the body and the worlds. Because the ego identifies itself with limitations, the body is considered separate and the world separate. Lying down on your bed in a closed room with eyes closed, you dream of London, the crowds there, and you among them. A certain body is identified as yourself in the dream. London and the rest could not have entered into the room and into your brain. However, such wide space and duration of time were all perceptible to you. They must have been projected from the brain. Although the world is so big and the brain so small, is it not a matter of wonder that such a big creation is contained in such small compass as one's brain? Though the screen is limited, still all the pictures of the cinema pass on it and are visible there. You do not wonder how such a long procession of events could be manifest on such a small screen. Similarly, with the objects and the brain. The disciple, then cosmic consciousness is not the same as realization? Maharshi, cosmic consciousness is behind the ego. It may be called Isvara, and the ego is jiva. Isvara may also be said to be the absolute. There is no difference there. Para, Isvara, jiva, jagat. The absolute is consciousness, mahat, which is the individual consciousness and the world. The consciousness which pervades even Isvara is the absolute one. Now let's break this dialogue down. Major Chadwick starts by asking, what is mahat? Maharshi replies, the projected light from absolute consciousness. Just as a seed swells up before sprouting, then sprouts and grows, so also the absolute consciousness projects light, manifests as the ego, and grows up as the body and the universe. In this exchange, Ramana is explaining the concept of mahat as the projected light of absolute consciousness, the light of consciousness. Ramana uses the metaphor of a seed swelling before sprouting to illustrate the absolute consciousness projecting light, leading to the manifestation of the ego, which further develops into the body and the entire universe. Ramana also introduces terms like chit, consciousness, mahat, projected consciousness, ahankaro, the ego, and manas, the mind, as interconnected elements. Major Chadwick asks, is it, mahat, the same as cosmic consciousness? Ramana affirms that mahat is indeed synonymous with cosmic consciousness. Both exist before the emergence of the ego and the universe. He draws a parallel between the way pictures on a screen are visible due to projected light, and how the body and other objects are visible in the light of the reflected consciousness. This reinforces the idea that Maha is the cosmic consciousness underlying all manifestations. In the microcosm, the body and all other objects are contained in the brain. The light of consciousness is projected onto the brain. The impressions in the brain become manifest as body in the worlds. Because the ego identifies itself with boundaries and limitations, the body is considered separate, and also the world is considered separate. Ramana uses the analogy of a dream to explain how, in the microcosm, the body and objects are contained in the brain, and the light is projected onto the brain, knowing them. The ego's identification as limited creates the perception of separateness between the body and the world. Ramana uses the example of laying down on your bed in a closed room with eyes closed and you dream of London. There are the crowds with you among them. A certain body is identified as yourself in the dream. London and the rest could not have entered into your room and your brain, however. the breadth of space and the duration of time were all in the dream. They must have been projected from the brain. Although the world is so big and the brain is so small, isn't it a wonder that such a big creation is contained in something as small as your brain? Though the screen is limited, still all the pictures of the cinema shine on it and are visible there. You don't wonder how such a long procession of events could be manifested on such a small screen. Similarly, with the world and its objects, and the brain. Ramana draws a parallel between the limited screen in a cinema and the small brain, suggesting that the brain serves as a medium through which the vast creation is manifested. Then Major Chadwick asks, then cosmic consciousness is not the same as realization? Maharshi answers, cosmic consciousness is behind the ego. It may be called Isvara, and the ego is jiva. Isvara may also be said to be the absolute. There is no difference there. Para, Isvara, jiva, jagat. The absolute is cosmic consciousness, mahat, which is the individual consciousness and the world. The consciousness which pervades even Isvara is the absolute consciousness. Ramana clarifies in this talk the relationship between cosmic consciousness and realization. Cosmic consciousness is the source of the ego. It is also called Isvara, while the ego is referred to as jiva. Ramana emphasizes that Isvara can also be considered the absolute, highlighting the unity and non-difference in the various aspects mentioned, including para, Isvara, jiva, jagat, no difference. So inquire, know yourself, and be always free and at peace. And now we have a talk from Nome, Beyond the States.
Silence is indicative of the absolute existence and inconceivable knowledge of Brahman. Brahman is existence, one's own very existence. One's own, not in the sense that it belongs to the jiva or individual, but that it is one's very being. This existence that you truly are is imperceptible to the senses, such as in the form of the body, and inconceivable to the mind, such as all thought. Waking, dreaming, deep dreamless sleep. Throughout all these, you exist. The content, and in the case of deep dreamless sleep, the absence of content of the mind keeps changing. Your existence, however, does not change. What is this existence? It is not to be defined by anything that appears in the waking or other states of mind. So, if all that appears while the mind is awake, the entirety of its content, is not you, not a definition for yourself, what is the true nature of yourself? This very same holds true for the dreaming and deep dreamless sleep states. A body appears in the waking state. You cannot be that body. So then, what are you? Whatever exists, whatever you are always and always exists. For existence will not cease to exist at any time. What exists and exists always is reality. What is not so is unreal all of the time. You exist, whether the mind is awake, dreaming, or sleeping, with content or without content. What is this beginningless and endless existence? Cease to regard what is conceived as being yourself. And what are you? With the inconceivable, there can be no comparison. Nor can there be any duality. Where even the notion I does not appear, there reality comprehends itself. For existence and consciousness are one and the same. Whoever realizes this by a profound inquiry to know the nature of the self has found peace, happiness, and boundless freedom that never end. And what he has found is what he is.
All right. And now we're going to take some time to inquire. Notice that you exist. You exist, and you know that you exist. Inquire. Investigate within yourself. Does the analogy of a dream help me see the relationship between the brain, the ego, and the perception of the world? How do I identify with limitations such as the body and mind? And how does this influence my perception of myself and the world? Reflecting on the cinema screen analogy, can I see parallels in my own life where a limited perspective obscures a vast array of experience? What's the connection between cosmic consciousness and realization? Who am I? What's the nature of my existence? What is it that actually exists? All right. And I chant. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. All right. Any comment or discussion? Now, I remembered doing this when I was a kid. Cosmic consciousness was one of the things that my mother talked about. And I'd really forgotten that kind of language until I read this.
Mm.
So certainly there have been people trying to approach this internal knowledge, for a long time in a lot of different ways.
Well, I think the Christian guy Matthew Fox used to talk about it all the time. In fact, I think your mother told me that Matthew Fox used to talk about
Okay,
it.
okay.
Yeah, consciousness is sort of a tricky word because it's obviously, well, to some of us, it's obvious that it's not in the brain,
Mm-hmm.
but that the brain is just another player in the dream that is in consciousness, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. The Hindus consider the brain as one of the sense organs.
Yeah. And so I guess that's the instrument on which the the play of life is displayed.
Right. The ego in the world is displayed there and lit up by the light of consciousness.
Yes, and the instrument of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I can cogitate it, which I try not to do, actually.
Uh-huh. And part of the problem is the brain only understands objects.
Yeah.
Because that way you'll know if the tiger is after you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we're not an object.
Yeah. But without a brain, which we will eventually get to that point, because it too shall become dust, and then the consciousness is still there, but there's nothing there to be aware of it until the
Well,
body is reborn.
It's funny because there certainly are living species of critters that are able to respond and interact with their environment, and they cannot find a brain or a nervous system in the critters.
Mm-hmm. True.
Take a jellyfish, for example.
Mm-hmm. Well, who knows what a jellyfish knows? I don't know.
And it's funny, it is the consciousness is the sea that we are always immersed in, and mostly never notice.
Right.
And even when I notice it, I know that I can't find it experientially. I can't find it in any of my experiences. And so certainly I can kind of infer it, but there is still, I think, a kind of knowledge that is deeper than that inferential knowledge. And that's still what Ramana is saying when he says, to know it, you have to be it.
That's right.
Hmm.
Mhm.
It's not an object to know. It's our very being.
Mhm.
Yes, yes.
And as long as we look out and see the world, we are the ego, and we cast a shadow.
I think Ramana made that pretty clear in this talk. I wonder a little bit with talks, there are several of them where they have in the talk some diagram. And I don't think Ramana was there with a blackboard to write on.
No,
Hmm.
probably Major Chadwick and his notebook.
Probably.
Uh-huh. Yeah, anyway, I just wonder about that because there have been several of them, and they're hard to figure out how to be able to express.
Yeah. And unfortunately, they just engage the thinker.
Right, right. Well, Evelyn, may you have a good time of not thinking.
Thank you. Yes, that's a good way to put it. And I'll see you both, if it's all right, tomorrow at about 4 something.
Yeah, that's perfect. Should we come up there?
No, I can come down there.
Okay.
Whatever.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Well, have
Yes.
a wonderful, wonderful trip, Evelyn, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thank you. Thank
Thanksgiving.
you.
Yes.
Thanksgiving to you. Thank you,
Yes.
Richard, for all you
Namaste.
do.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
These videos help bring Ramana Maharshi's teachings into your direct experience. Subscribe now